right, so while we're waiting, I'm going to invite everyone to please just put your name in the chat, just so I know who's here. And as a fun little icebreaker, I'm going to ask you to share your favorite holiday. Yeah, so Gretchen says she loves Easter. Soko says Thanksgiving. Sally loves Halloween. Gasol, Christmas. Sandeep said New Year's, and Nishi said Thanksgiving. Yeah, my favorite holiday is definitely Christmas as well. All right, so everyone, welcome to today's monthly workshop where we'll be talking about food and mood. My name is Ailar, and I'm the functional nutritionist at Pacific Integrative Psychiatry. For those of you that may not know, today's topic is going to be food for mood and digestion over the holidays. And if you are newer to the workshops, you may not be familiar with me. So I want to share a little bit about who I am. My name is Ailar, and I'm a certified clinical nutritionist and functional medicine provider. My passion is to help people optimize their wellness through their gut health by helping them create a personalized nutrition plan using specific laboratory testing and identifying and treating underlying imbalances. And a lot of this has to do with the gut and our mental health. And if you are interested in learning more about me and our practice, you can follow us on our social media platforms at Pacific Integrative Psych. All right, so a little bit more about the types of services we offer at Pacific Integrative Psychiatry. So we take a holistic approach, a functional medicine approach to mental health. So we offer psychiatry services, which include medication management and integrative treatments. We also offer nutrition consultations with individualized plans, and we offer laboratory testing such as stool testing, blood and urine analysis.
Yes. So I'm sorry to interrupt. The slide is still on the first intro slide. If you want to just move the slide deck forward so people can see, that might be helpful. Or at least I'm just seeing the intro slide. I don't know if other people are seeing the slide deck.
Let's see. All right, so this is the slide we left off on. Let me know if it gets stuck again on this deck. All right. Are you able to see the next slide?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, excellent. Yes. All right. So just a little bit more information about what you can expect for our workshops. So we host these free workshops every third or fourth Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. A recording of the workshop will be sent a few days after the session in case you join a little bit later, or if you miss some of the information, or if you want to rewatch the workshop. And participation is definitely encouraged, and I would even recommend typing in your questions in the chat box as we go along. If you feel comfortable, you can turn on your camera or your audio at the end of the workshop to ask your questions as well. And as we're going along, a couple of things to keep in mind. So please respect each other's privacy and try to minimize any distractions. Okay, so here's a little bit of information about what you can expect as we're going through the workshop. So first, we'll be talking about the holidays. So Thanksgiving is coming up next week if you celebrate Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's. We'll be talking about certain digestive issues, especially some of the most common digestive issues that people experience. We'll be talking about certain food and recipe ideas, and how you can eat to help your physical health and mental health. We'll also try a monthly experiment after the workshop based on something that you can take away and try at home for yourself. And then lastly, we'll do a Q&A, and I'll answer some of your questions.
And Ailar, we're still on sorry to interrupt you again. We're still on our services slide. It doesn't look like the slide deck advanced.
Okay, so I'm not going to do the Canva one anymore. Okay, so this is the slide that I was just going over. I apologize. The computer's having some technical difficulties today. So this is just an outline of what you can expect for the workshop, some of the things that we'll be discussing. So now moving on to the holidays and some of the common digestive issues that most people experience. So these include things like bloating, gas, nausea, acid reflux, indigestion, even heartburn, and irregular bowel movements. So I want to hear from the audience. I know these are really common symptoms, but please type a yes in the chat if you feel like these are common digestive issues that you experience. Do you experience a lot of bloating, gas in general, and also around the holidays? I'd be curious to know. Yeah, so Gretchen said, my stomach takes on the brunt of stress. Yeah, definitely. And stress can be, throughout the whole year or especially around the holidays. Yeah, Nishi said bloating, definitely. And that can be very common around the holidays. Soko as well, bloating and indigestion. Yeah, Ghazal, bloating. Sally says agrees with Gretchen. Stress goes to the stomach, definitely. And it is that gut feeling that we all tend to experience as we tend to feel more stress. You can really feel it in your digestive system. All right, great. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. So we'll talk a little bit more about these symptoms, what causes them, and how we can really help reduce them around the holidays. All right, so here you can see some of the typical causes of these digestive issues during the holidays. So for example, excessive alcohol intake, eating larger portions, especially during Thanksgiving that's coming up, eating foods that are more rich than what you're used to, a lack of fiber, and dehydration, especially if you're having caffeinated beverages like coffee and tea, your body can become more dehydrated. And if you're not drinking enough water as well. Higher stress levels, as some people mentioned, and irregular sleep schedules, especially for a lot of people who are traveling. If you're going to be in a different time zone, your meal times might change, and also your sleep schedule in general. Now, an important fact to note about how the gut and the brain are related and why our gut health affects our mental health so much. One fact is that 90% of serotonin is actually made in the gut. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter that affects our mental health. It can affect our mood and our happiness. So 90% of that is actually produced in the gut, not the brain, as we would expect. Additionally, 50% of dopamine is made in the gut. So dopamine is responsible for reward. It's responsible for pleasure and also our mood. So it's interesting to know that actually 50% of that is produced in the gut rather than the brain. So this means that having a healthy gut environment is really going to affect our overall mood, our mental health, and our energy levels during the holidays. All right, but there is good news. So it's important to know that simple changes, simple things can actually have a big impact, right? So you can make a few simple changes in your lifestyle, in your nutrition to help reduce these digestive issues and support your mental health during the holidays. All right, so now we'll talk a bit more about how nutrition can help your mental health and reducing these digestive symptoms. And we'll talk about a few key nutrients that I would recommend incorporating into your food and recipes during the holidays. And these include plants, fermented foods, and herbs and spices. All right, so you may be wondering, why should I be eating plants? Why should I be eating more veggies? And there's actually a really important reason for that, not just for your physical health and your digestion, but also because of how it affects your mental health. So vegetables are rich in fiber, which is an anti-inflammatory and a prebiotic. Prebiotics are the types of food that probiotic bacteria feed on. So this is how they can help improve our gut health because the probiotic bacteria have the food that they need to grow and thrive to create a healthier gut environment. Vegetables can also increase our fiber intake, which is associated with lower levels of anxiety, stress, and depression. So eating more vegetables can also positively affect our mental health. All right, so you may be wondering, how can I incorporate more plants or veggies into my diet? So one step is to pick 1, 2, or maybe even 3 veggies to start with. And you can pick your favorite vegetables. You don't have to eat all the different types of vegetables. I always say stick with what you like first. So you can pick 1, 2, or even 3. You can fill half of your plate with these veggies, and you can either use fresh or frozen vegetables. But if you are using frozen vegetables or packaged vegetables, one thing I would recommend looking out for is preservatives or additives, which are used for preserving these vegetables for a longer time. These include things like salts, sugars, and even added oils, which can be unhealthy. All right, so here's a fun recipe idea that you can try during the holidays. So you can make a sheet pan of veggies. All you have to do is preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You can cut your mixed veggies into about 1-inch pieces. You can toss them with olive oil or avocado oil, some salt, pepper, and you can roast them in the oven for about 25 to 35 minutes. And they're ready, and you can add them onto your meals. Perfect for the holidays, especially for Thanksgiving. One tip is to, again, use your favorite veggies. So maybe things like broccoli, carrots, Brussels sprouts, squash, bell peppers. You can also add additional spices or seasonings. So things like garlic, chili, soy sauce, other seasoning like maybe turmeric, onion, and you can play with it and make it more palatable for yourself. So now I want to hear from everybody. What are some of your favorite vegetables or vegetables that you look forward to eating during the holidays? Oh, Gretchen said, love yams. Yes, yummy. So go butternut squash, acorn squash, Brussels sprouts, and broccolini. Yes, broccolini is my favorite too. Yes. Brussels sprouts. Yes. Yeah. Broccoli, squash, broccolini. Yeah, perfect. I love it. Yeah, and variety is also great. Melissa also said Brussels sprouts. I know those are very common during Thanksgiving. A lot of people like to cook them with, balsamic vinegar. You can just use oil. You can roast them in the oven. Yeah, yum. Yes, Sally also said cauliflower. Yes, we'll talk a little bit more about a fun recipe for cauliflower later. And I love using that as a side dish. All right, great. Thank you everyone for sharing. All right, so now we'll talk a little bit more about fermented foods. So you may be wondering, what are fermented foods and why should I be eating them? So fermented foods are live active cultures. They're rich in probiotics, which can improve the gut microbiome and our digestion. Probiotics are the good bacteria that we need to create a healthy gut microbiome and to be able to properly digest our food and create the hormones and neurotransmitters that we talked about that affect our mental health. So this is why fermented foods are associated with a lower risk of anxiety and depression. So eating more fermented foods not only helps the digestive tract and reducing digestive symptoms, but it can also positively affect our mental health. So here are some examples of fermented foods, things that you can add into your diet to incorporate more probiotics, things like kefir, yogurt, pickles, tempeh, kimchi, miso, kombucha, sauerkraut. So probiotics are found in a variety of fermented foods. And if you continuously incorporate these in your diet, you can actually positively impact your gut microbiome and mental health. Now, I know some of these foods may not be things that people eat very commonly, but I am curious to know, does anyone eat any of these foods right now or use them regularly in their meals? Yeah, so Soko asked a really good question. Is there one type of yogurt that is better than others? So this depends, right? So I know there's so many different types of yogurt out there, but typically yogurt that comes from cows is going to have higher amounts of probiotic, right? Versus a plant-based yogurt may not have as much probiotics. And if you are choosing yogurt, I would recommend choosing plain yogurt because they usually have a lot of added sugars. And this isn't just going to be listed in grams of sugar, but I would recommend checking ingredients. So for example, plain Greek yogurt is going to be very rich in probiotics versus a sweetened or flavored yogurt that is mostly made up of sugar. Gretchen said, love kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles, yogurt, perfect, kefir, and miso soup. Yeah, I love miso soup too. And Nishi also said yogurt, kombucha, Melissa, yeah, yogurt. Sally also said yogurt, pickles, kimchi, sauerkraut. Yeah, Sandeep as well. Soko, I eat Greek yogurt most of the time. Love the kombucha and kimchi. Yeah. So for kombucha, you will find that there is added sugars, and this is okay because the live and active cultures in the kombucha actually require the sugars to grow and thrive. And the way that we can tell how much sugar is really found in a beverage or in kombucha is that every 4 grams of sugar is equivalent to 1 teaspoon. So you'll find that some kombuchas have less sugars, but just as much live active cultures or probiotics. So I would recommend checking the label and also the ingredients. Sometimes kombucha is sweetened with honey instead of sugar. So there's a lot of different options out there. Yeah, Soko said, I started making my own. Perfect. So that's, the best approach. If you can do that, you know exactly what ingredients you're putting into it, and it's often much healthier than when it's produced in a factory. Great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. All right. So now we're going to move on to herbs and spices, which I know are really common for making different recipes, and especially some of these specific spices that we'll talk about. They're really important for supporting our digestion and also our brain health. So the ones we'll cover today are turmeric, saffron, and ginger. All right. So first spice we'll talk about is turmeric. So turmeric can help our mental health by reducing depression. It's also been shown to alleviate gas and bloating. Saffron helps reduce depression and anxiety, and it also helps reduce digestive spasms. Ginger can positively impact our memory and attention, and it can help reduce nausea. So here you can see not only are these spices impacting our mental health positively, but also our digestion. Now, does anyone use these spices commonly? Things like turmeric, saffron, ginger. I know they can also be incorporated into foods that you buy at the grocery store. Gretchen, I use turmeric and ginger, and now I need to get some saffron. Yes, saffron is such a delicious spice, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can add it into your recipes. Nishi said turmeric and ginger. Yeah, and I love the combination of those. Sandeep, turmeric, ginger, not so much saffron. Yeah, mainly ginger, Soko, on occasion turmeric. Yes. Yeah, and the key with these spices is that in order for us to really see the benefits, it's important to use them consistently in our meals. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we can do that. All right, so how can we use these spices in our recipes and our meals? And how can we make sure that they're positively contributing to our mental health and physical health? So for example, turmeric, you can add 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric to a soup or a stew. Black pepper can also significantly increase its bioavailability of curcumin, which is this active component of the turmeric that's necessary for us to get all these positive health benefits. So every time you're cooking with turmeric, make sure to add the black pepper in order to absorb the curcumin. A recipe idea can be a cauliflower, turmeric, and ginger soup. The next spice, saffron. So saffron can be added to things like rice, pasta, desserts. I even heard someone adding it to their oatmeal. A recipe idea is Persian saffron rice. So that's one of my favorite recipes is you can make this like crispy rice and you can add saffron to it, and it's really delicious and has a really nice scent to it. Ginger, you can steep it in warm water for tea or add it into a stir fry. So a recipe idea is adding fresh ginger to your tea with lemon after a meal. And this can really help with your digestion. It can help alleviate some of those digestive symptoms that we talked about, and it can help reduce nausea. All right, so now getting a little bit back to the basics and knowing that it's not always about what we eat, but also how to eat, right? So how we eat can also affect our digestion and mental health. So first, it's really important to know that we should be sitting down during mealtime, right? So eating while standing can really disrupt the digestive tract. It can even put our bodies into a state of stress, and it can make it difficult for the body to really break down the food properly. Also having an attitude of gratitude, right? So showing appreciation for our food, being thankful for it, maybe saying a prayer before we eat. Also, slowing down while we're eating. So using all your senses, noticing the colors, the smell, the taste, and even the texture of your food. So doing this with individual ingredients on your plate rather than, eating them all at once. So really taking the time to appreciate what's on your plate. Now, lastly, chewing really well. So this is one of the most important things we can do because a lot of the digestion actually occurs in our mouth. So as we're chewing, we're releasing a lot of enzymes before the food even starts traveling down the digestive tract. So by chewing the food, we're doing a lot of the work that the rest of the digestive system is going to have to do later on. And this can help alleviate a lot of those symptoms like bloating, abdominal pain that may result later on. So here are 3 benefits of eating more slowly. So 1, increased awareness of hunger cues. So did you know that it actually takes 20 minutes for the brain to know that you're full? So if we're continuously eating for a period of 20 to 30 minutes, you can imagine it's going to take the duration of that entire meal before we realize that we're full. And this is one of the main reasons people end up overeating or feeling really full after a meal. Eating slowly can also help our digestion. It can help reduce symptoms like gas, bloating, and other GI issues that we talked about earlier. And eating slowly can help reduce stress. It can help lower cortisol levels, and it can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is really important for proper digestion. The opposite of that would be our sympathetic nervous system, right? So if we're putting the body into a state of stress, the body can't prioritize the digestive system. It's going to prioritize the stress response, which are going to counteract each other, and it's going to make it really difficult to properly digest our food and more likely for us to develop those digestive symptoms we talked about. All right, so this month, we're going to try something that's called your monthly experiment. Basically, what it means is that based on the things you learned about today, I would recommend selecting something to take away that you like to try at home, maybe over the holidays. And it really has to do with enhancing your awareness of your meals, your nutrition, your mental health, how you're eating. So I would recommend just picking one thing to try this month. And for those of you that signed up earlier, you received a workshop. So that would be a great place to just jot down your monthly experiment, something that you want to focus on. Maybe this has to do with trying a new recipe, trying a new herb or spice, maybe saffron, incorporating more fermented foods. Maybe you want to try eating tempeh or Greek yogurt. Or maybe you want to focus a bit more on how you're eating rather than what you're eating. So eating slower, chewing your food more thoroughly, making sure you always sit down while you eat. And I would recommend really noticing how this feels. So writing down the goal and then paying attention to how it's affecting you physically, your digestive symptoms, and how it's affecting you mentally. And taking notes can be helpful, whether in a journal or just taking notes on your phone. And then the goal is for us to check back again next month with an update to see how your experiment went. How did it go for you? Did it work out well? Did it not work out? And I'd be curious to hear from everyone. So I want to hear from you guys right now. Does anyone have any ideas as far as what you want to try? Is there a monthly experiment that you already know, something you want to implement in your diet? Yeah, so Gretchen said, I would like to try that Persian saffron rice and also eating slower and more mindfully. Yes, I love that. Yeah, the Persian saffron rice is great. It's going to be a great recipe for Thanksgiving. And eating slower and more mindfully is something I would recommend for everyone. If someone has a harder time really slowing down during the meal times, one technique I recommend is trying to eat with your non-dominant hand. So it really helps you slow down because we can't coordinate as well. And it helps you eat slowly. It takes longer to really scoop food into your fork or into your spoon. So your non-dominant hand can be a really great way to incorporate mindful eating. Melissa said more prebiotic foods and more fermented foods. Yes, I love that. And I love the combination of those two, because what you're doing there is you're putting in the fermented foods, the probiotics, and you're putting in the prebiotics, which is the food that they need to grow and thrive. Sally said, I'd like to add ginger more regularly over this month and eating more slowly and prebiotics. Yes, I love it. And ginger is a really great spice. You can add it into your lattes, your oatmeal, stir fry. Nishi said, I would like to focus on mindful, slow eating, especially over the holidays. Yeah, and that's going to be really important, especially for a lot of people who tend to skip meals, anticipating a larger meal later on. We tend to eat slow, more quickly, and we tend to eat larger portions. So really trying to slow down during that meal time, maybe eating something small in the morning if you're going to be having a larger meal later on. And that can really help prepare your digestive system rather than having it kind of be shocked by a larger meal that comes later on. Sandeep also said, saffron rice, should we be eating white or is brown rice better? Yeah, that's a really good question. So I know that brown rice typically gets the reputation of being healthier because it tends to contain slightly more fiber. But I wouldn't say one is necessarily better for us than the other. They're both carbohydrates. Now, brown rice may take a little bit longer to break down into energy and sugars, but whenever we're eating a carbohydrate like rice, I would just recommend pairing it with a protein. The protein is going to help balance the blood sugars. It's going to give you more energy and nutrients in that meal. And like we talked about, trying to get the veggies in there as well. Soko, I'd like to eat slower as well and chewing well. Would like to try incorporating ginger into my morning hot lemon water. Oh, I love that. Yes. So the hot lemon water, a lot of people use that in the mornings as a way to kind of soothe the digestive system. And adding the ginger in there is going to be really helpful as well. And I'm curious to see how that affects you, Soko, and how it affects your digestion and even your mental health. So I would recommend making note of it on the days when you do incorporate the ginger. And once you do it consistently, let's say for a week, then I would be curious to see how is this affecting you in the long term. So any of these spices, we don't necessarily immediately see the effects. I would recommend doing it continuously and selecting a goal that you can be consistent with, right? So smaller goals are usually more achievable for us. And when we make specific goals, it's easier for us to achieve versus setting a goal that may be more broad or general. So as an example, instead of saying, I'm going to eat more fermented foods, you can say, I'm going to eat one fermented food for lunch every day for the next 7 days. That's a really specific goal. It's only applied to one meal, and there's a duration for how long you're going to achieve this goal for. And writing it down again, maybe on the worksheet, typing it in your phone or in a journal, just as a reminder. All right, great. I love that. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. All right, so here's a little bit of a recap of what we talked about today. So we talked about the holidays and certain digestive issues that may come up for most people. We talked about food and recipe ideas that you can try during the holidays. We talked about how to eat to help support your digestion and mental health. And then we also decided on a monthly experiment to try something that you're going to do differently in your nutrition or your lifestyle, and then reporting back at the next workshop to see how it went. All right, so now we're at the Q&A portion. So I invite you to type your questions into the chat, or if you feel comfortable, I invite you to turn on your camera. You can ask your questions, or you can turn on your audio. And if anyone has any suggestions for topics you want us to cover in the future, please share that with us as well. You can type it in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and I can call on you. All right, Sally, you're welcome. Yeah, and if anyone joined us a little bit later, this workshop is being recorded and we'll send a recording to everyone in just a couple of days.
I have a question, Ailar, and thank you. That was really informative and really helpful, and I'm excited to try the mindful eating and focusing on that. So a question about chewing, like you mentioned, I mean, such a basic fundamental thing that I think a lot of us kind of forget to do, especially if you're just like kind of eating on the go. So there's that old adage of, like you should chew your food 20 to 30 times. Is that what you would recommend? Or can you speak about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think chewing our food is something that we really have to be mindful of as we're eating, because we're taking so many different bites. We have to consistently remind ourselves of that. And chewing our foods, 20 to 30 times would be more ideal. But again, this can depend on how big of a scoop you're having, right? Are you eating larger amounts at once? So the more we eat, the more we should be chewing, right? So if you're having a small bite of chicken, that may not take as much chewing versus if you're having a large scoop of chicken and veggies and rice. So again, I would recommend starting with a goal of how many times you intend to chew your food. So maybe just saying to yourself, counting to 20 before you swallow. And then eventually the goal is to adapt this into a lifestyle where we're kind of subconsciously doing it. We're no longer consistently trying to implement it, because that can also put the body into a state of stress, kind of, right? Saying, oh no, I can't chew my food until I reach 30. But then eventually your body starts to adapt into a style where you're chewing more rather than just kind of swallowing and eating more quickly. Gretchen, this was perfect, and I look forward to checking this one next month. Yeah, Gretchen, I look forward to hearing from you and how your experiment goes. Great. Any other questions? All right. And if anyone has any other questions, you can email us. And if you're interested in learning more about our practice and what we do, I would recommend going to our website, which is here. It's pacificintegrativepsych.com. You can also send us your ideas for future workshops. We would really appreciate that. But otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. And I hope that you can join us again next month for the next workshop. I apologize, my video wasn't working today, but hopefully I'll get to see you all next week. I'm sorry, next month. You're welcome, Soko. You're welcome, Ghazal. You're welcome, Sandeep, Gretchen, of course. Everyone have a good night.